Good morning. Looks like another glorious day here in Wisconsin. I hope everybody's having a great morning. Lots to go over today. And as always, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch the show, whether you're watching it live or if you're watching it later when you're watching our videos. Please subscribe if you're new. Please like the video if you're watching the video and you find it of interest for you. That would be great, and we just love to have you join our community. As always, during the show, please call in 715-352-0801. I'd love to talk to you and talk about anything you want to talk about. Talk about how great Wisconsin is. Talk about how great your state is. Talk about what you're doing during these times. Talk about what you're thinking during these times. Talk about specific issues we're seeing in the news. And we're going to go over a lot of those today. And again, as always, we'll start out with Opela For Wisconsin, getting into the middle here of nomination papers. And of course, this has been a very challenging time for nomination papers because for the first time, really the only way to get them is by having someone download your nomination paper and fill out the page and fill out being the signatory and then mail it to the candidate. And then the candidate and will probably have to mail all of those in. So it's important to note that it's going to take a little extra effort, and hopefully we can work together to get that done. Please go to my website at trailblazer19.com and then click on nomination papers and download my nomination papers. When you download it, you'll get a document like this, which you then sign and fill in all of the information across, and then also do the same at the bottom as the person signing the paper. And there are instructions from the state that come along with that. If you want that to know what is going on and maybe make sure you're getting the paper filled out correctly. We've also included our own instructions, so you can download those as well. That's a separate download. Just click on that link and it'll help you find that information. And then, of course, there's a district map, and it's interactive. It's really cool. So you can open that up, and then you can zoom in case you're on the line, want to know if you're in there, especially like in counties in Genoa and Wood, around St. Croix, those areas. In some cases, you're in and out of the district. And it's difficult to know sometimes if you're in or out of the district. But this map helps you with that, and it's got a lot of interesting information about the district, so please take a moment to look at that. Also, there is an instruction page, sample page you can download. It highlights what needs to be done for the signatures, and hopefully that will help you. And as always, please call the campaign. You can call in to 715-352-0801, and we'll help you in any way we can, help you get through filling out the page and sending it in. And again, as part of the campaign, we'd love to hear from you. So last night, another debate on COVID-19, and basically both candidates are on board with everything that's going on, and they're not expressing any concerns about the Bill of Rights. They're not expressing any concerns about what's being proposed in order to get open. Both Tom and Tricia are right there with everybody. Let's just keep stomping on the Constitution. Let's keep stomping on the Bill of Rights. And still, to this day, we do not have corresponding flu data. And there is a real concern that the data being presented to us includes data from deaths related to flu, from bronchitis, from other complications related to getting the flu. So, we have to continue to ask for that information and push to get that information as they try to push different scenarios back on us. One of those issues is this social tracking. I mean, you need to pay close attention to something that's being shown in the news where they're actually showing phone companies using and supplying tracking data from your phone. They're showing maps that show density of people at a specific location. The Facebook is doing the same thing. We need to make sure these people who we're using their services understand our data is not for their use. The fact that we have a phone doesn't mean that the government can now spy on where we're going. And I would encourage you to all turn off all of your location services, to identify that in writing to anyone that might be using data related to your location. And also, just so you know, your car is tracked the same way. So you need to make sure that, with the advent of Wi-Fi in your car, or location services in your car for roadside assistance, all of that data is being compiled and is tied to your name. And based on the current proposals for social tracking and contact tracking and social tracing, all those words that are being thrown around, they'll compile all that data and they'll specifically locate people who, I'm sure they'll write algorithms that show people who are coming in too close a contact to other areas or going to areas where they shouldn't be going, and start pinpointing those people and focusing on those people. And we're going to talk about what would your response be to that? Well, that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to do that. I mean, that's not even viable. Well, today we're going to watch two videos again. Both Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham are doing a great job of providing a dissenting view, and they're very well-known spokesmen. They're very well-known hosts of shows. So I like to show them in my show because I'm brand new, and you can look at me and say, well, who is that guy? What does he know? I mean, he's saying crap that we don't have any way to verify. Well, this is a way to verify it, and so that's why I show these videos. And there's two very good ones today. So for this purpose and for the topics we're going to continue to cover, let's take a look at both those videos. We'll start with Tucker's video. I'm going to turn it up a little bit here.
That we can begin to scale back our mass quarantines, particularly the more draconian elements of them, without disastrous risks to public health. There will always be risk. People will long die of this virus, no matter whether we get inoculations against it or not. But we can pull back a little. We know that because there is evidence of it pretty much everywhere. Sweden never locked down, and despite what you have likely heard, Sweden is still no worse off than a lot of Europe. States in this country like South Dakota, Iowa, and Arkansas did not issue shelter-in-place orders ever, yet all three of those places were below the national average in coronavirus cases and in deaths. Denmark and the Czech Republic loosened restrictions and have seen, at this point, no surge in new cases. So it's pretty clear that in many parts of this country, we could almost certainly do the same. And yet some cities and states will not consider doing this. In fact, if anything, they're moving in the opposite direction. As the pandemic appears to recede, at least for the moment, their restrictions are becoming tighter. And that's when you know this isn't really about public health. It's about making mediocre people more powerful. And there may be no one in America more mediocre than the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. Lightfoot recently announced that anyone who meets privately with friends or even talks about meeting privately with friends on social media will be monitored and could be arrested.
Now, I've directed Superintendent Brown to order all police districts to give special attention to these parties. And this is how it's going to be. We will shut you down, we will cite you, and if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period. The time for educating people into compliance is over. Don't be stupid. Don't come out. Don't advertise on social media. We're watching you.
Do the people of Chicago take Lori Lightfoot seriously? How did a buffoon like that wind up in the mayor's office? Lori Lightfoot believes she has the power to imprison you if you talk about your weekend plans on Facebook. How did she get the power to do that? Well, that's still not clear. What is clear is that Lightfoot has no intention of following her own rules, living by her own restrictions. We know that because Lori Lightfoot recently broke her own quarantine in order to, and this is real, get her hair done. She got caught when her hairdresser blabbed about it on social media, but perhaps not surprisingly, she didn't seem ashamed in the slightest. Unlike you, she explained, Lori Lightfoot has to look good.
I'm the public face of this city. I'm on national media and I'm out in the public eye. And, you know, I'm a person who, I take my personal hygiene very seriously. As I said, I felt like I needed to have a haircut. I'm not able to do that myself, and so I got a haircut.
I take my personal hygiene very seriously. I feel like I needed to have a haircut. The funny thing is, you may be feeling the same way. Maybe you take your personal hygiene seriously too. Maybe you'd like a haircut. But are you Lori Lightfoot? Okay, didn't think so. So shut up and get back to your smelly apartment. Stop complaining. And if you don't, you're a Nazi. That's their new line, which is really their old line. In fact, it's always their line. Disagree with them and you are a Nazi. And because they've now lost all capacity for nuance, they're actually saying it out loud now. Over the weekend, CNN suggested that anti-lockdown protesters in Michigan were in fact white nationalists, very much like the ones who marched in Charlottesville famously a few years ago, because of course they are. They're disagreeing with the people in power. Must be Nazis. Governor Gretchen Whitmer hastened to agree with that assessment.
Some of the outrageousness of what happened at our Capitol this week, depicted some of the worst racism and awful parts of our history in this country. You know, the Confederate flags and nooses, the swastikas, the, behavior that you've seen in all of the clips is not representative of who we are in Michigan.
So when you disagree with me, says mouth-breathing political hack Gretchen Whitmer, you're a Nazi. And CNN agrees, because if there's one thing that CNN cannot stand to see, it's dissent. Ordinary people disagreeing with the proclamations of the mighty. How is that even allowed? In fact, just the other day, one CNN reporter whined on Twitter that too many people were going to a park that he liked. So when New York police swooped in to break it up, that reporter applauded. How dare they? It's my park. Over on CNN, they celebrated the arrival of Chinese drones in the skies over New Jersey, because what this country really needs is more surveillance and hectoring from the people in charge. Or as MSNBC put it, it's life-saving.
Please go away from each other and separate.
Elizabeth, New Jersey is now using drones to spread the life-saving message.
You are not immune to this virus.
The drones make it easier for police to see into certain areas where access by patrol cars is more difficult. That includes tight spaces between buildings, behind schools, and in backyards.
You don't need to be some crazed, wild-eyed civil libertarian with a goatee to find all of this pretty distressing. What's happening now is unprecedented, it's dangerous, and it's completely and unequivocally unconstitutional. It violates the letter and the intent of the Bill of Rights on many levels. And someday soon we will deeply regret letting all of this happen. If only we had someone now to protect us as our rights disappear. Oh wait, we do. The ACLU. For more than 100 years, the American Civil Liberties Union fought for the civil rights of the powerless, which at this stage means you're the powerless. So where's the ACLU today? Well, they're playing along with the authorities. They're sucking up to power. They're joining CNN and telling you to shut up and obey. As freedoms vanish across this country, the ACLU has filed dozens of lawsuits, not on your behalf or on behalf of the Bill of Rights, but demanding mail-in voting to abet voter fraud, demanding the release of more criminals and illegal aliens. Their website boasts about this at length. But so far, it looks like the ACLU has filed only a single lawsuit in response to the mass quarantines, and it was in Puerto Rico. What's the message? The message is the ACLU is squarely on the side of your overlords now. That's a change. Meanwhile, our country and its centuries-old norms are dying before our eyes. We could give you many examples here, too. In Montgomery County, Ohio, authorities are reporting a greater than 50% increase in deaths from opioid ODs. Addiction rates, not just to drugs, but to alcohol, are skyrocketing. From the data we have so far, that seems true across the country. And yet, paradoxically, at the very same time, cancer patients are going without. Here's one indicator of that. Merck, the pharmaceutical company, the huge pharmaceutical manufacturer, is predicting a major hit to its earnings. Why? Because its biggest cancer-fighting drug is being prescribed less often. It's not that fewer people have cancer or they need it less, it's they can't get into the hospitals or they're too afraid to. They've been intimidated by politicians into not getting cancer treatments. Vaccines, checkups, major surgeries, all being delayed. People will die as a result of this. In fact, they already are dying, and that's fine with the people in charge. Just don't plan a dinner party on Facebook. They'll arrest you for that.
So you gotta be kidding me. I mean, if you aren't being online listening to these types of broadcasts and understanding what's going on in the country, this is what I predicted 6 weeks ago in my conversations with Representative Culp and Senator Petrowski when this initially started, that, you know, this whole process is arbitrary, it's capricious, it's dictatorship. You're pushing people to the limit, and that there will be people who abuse their power. Governor of Michigan, for example, she has a outlet to express her views and reach a number of people that other people don't. So when people are protesting, they're Nazis. When people are making the point that her approach to handling this is dictatorship, they're referencing Nazis, they're referencing the Ku Klux Klan or the South, or these groups that tried to push a message that's inconsistent with the beliefs of the country. And she is making decisions without all the data or supplying the data, but saying they use the data. And that's demonstrated by all of the representatives that and governors who continue to violate their own direction and then make these ridiculous statements about why it's okay for them to do it, but not you. That statement alone should be one of the most concerning for you. You got to think about what's being said. Do what I say, but not what I do. These are just classic control situations, and they're using something that's creating fear among people to expand their power. Look at the mayor of Chicago. I mean, her statements were absolutely ridiculous, but the one you need to be most concerned about, as we just talked about earlier, is we're watching you. That statement alone should send chills up your spine, should make sure you've got enough ammo, should make you ready to defend yourself. We're watching you. You need to say that every morning when you get up, to understand that whatever you're doing, there's some government or somebody watching you. And much like the video we've talked about where a woman had her child going to play with other kids and was reported on by other people. I mean, have you watched the movies? Do you watch movies about this, which were like so far-fetched you couldn't believe that people would turn in other people for having their kid play with another kid, that the government would convince you through fear that you can't make a choice like that and that you're going to kill people, which is absolutely asinine. People are still going to work. They're still going to work without getting sick. My daughter just started a job. I mean, it's not at the extreme they're using. And if you look at it from a totally objective point of view, it's no different than the things we did for the flu. And there is a reason they're not giving us the flu data. There's a reason they're commingling the flu data with influenza. Okay? They're saying it right on the CDC site. These are probable cases, meaning they're pushing doctors, much like the 2 doctors in California we're talking about and are being censored because they're telling everyone that the hospitals and government agencies are pushing doctors to say it's COVID, even if it potentially isn't, or is some other complication related to some other morbidity. And that's not what we're concerned about right now. If there's even a chance it was COVID, they want it in the numbers. So they skew the data. They create the fear. I mean, I don't even know how you would believe the numbers you're being told right now at 70,000 deaths. Okay, how many of those were actually COVID? How many of those were influenza? We have all these people that die, 62,000 people a year. So people are dying from influenza right now, but we're not seeing what that data is in correlation to the flu. To the COVID data, the Wuhan flu. It just goes on and on and on. And in terms of experts, Laura Ingraham had some things to say about that, and let's listen to what she had to say.
Now, the Department of Homeland Security has just released the shocking new info on China's COVID cover-up. Senator Lindsey Graham is here on that. Also, ordinary citizens are making their voices heard amid these continuing shutdowns. We're going to speak to one tonight. And Raymond Arroyo is here with the latest developments on the Biden sexual assault allegations and why some might want a former First Lady to crash the party. But first, my thoughts on America in shutdown day 49. Now, we have been told throughout this pandemic that we need to listen to the experts on everything from the lethality of the coronavirus to what the proper response to it should be. But time and again, the experts have been wrong. On January 22nd, the WHO praised China's great work in preventing the spread of the virus.
Actions taken immediately, especially on the market, the Wuhan market, seafood market, and followed by other actions was very commendable. And the involvement of the leadership, starting from the president himself, who gave really clear guidance, the premier and the minister was also very impressive and different actually from previously, from previous actions. You see the capacity and you see the political commitment. And that's continuing, and we appreciate that.
I appreciated that. Well, Tedros and the WHO, a complete and utter joke. Okay, China was neither transparent nor serious in preventing the spread to other countries, as we've been documenting. But then 6 weeks later, our politicians began making claims that were untethered to reality, like on ventilators.
All the projections say you could have an apex needing 140,000 beds and about 40,000 ventilators. We're following the data and the science, and that's what the data and the science says.
Well, of course, the data and the science were wrong. In reality, New York used about 25% of that total, and that was good news. But on the severity of the outbreak nationwide, we heard things like this.
We are your future.
Close to New York's hospitalization or COVID death numbers. Well, then we were told the shutdowns had to be extended because social distancing was the only way to fight the virus.
I'm just asking them to try really, really hard for these next 28 days because they will make a tremendous difference.
Just keep it up because this is going to get us out of it. This is our best and only great public health tool.
But the former head of the FDA, now informal White House coronavirus advisor, Scott Gottlieb, spilled the beans on Sunday.
While mitigation didn't fail, I think it's fair to say that it didn't work as well as we expected. We expected that we would start seeing more significant declines in new cases and deaths around the nation at this point, and we're just not seeing that.
Well, although intuitively, I think it probably seemed like social distancing would be necessary, there was no real scientific basis for believing that, since it never been studied. And as one infectious disease doc told me last week, trying to stop this virus with social distancing is like trying to drive a nail through Jell-O. Viruses spread, that's what they do. They often weaken as they go, and if it's like SARS, we hope it is, it'll eventually burn out, as SARS did. An observational study by a researcher at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, not yet peer-reviewed, examined whether stay-at-home orders actually prevented deaths in Western Europe. Comparing the trajectory of the epidemic before and after the lockdown, we find no evidence of any discontinuity in the growth rate, doubling time, and reproduction number trends. We provide estimates of the death toll in the absence of any lockdown policies and show that these strategies might not have saved any life in Western Europe. Well, if true, I say if, that would be stunning. And the author does echo the sentiments of Nobel laureate Michael Levitt of Stanford University.
What's your view of the lockdown policy that so many European countries and states in America have introduced?
I think it is a huge mistake. I think that everybody panicked. They were fed incorrect numbers by epidemiologists. There's no doubt in my mind that when we come to look back on this, the damage done by lockdown will exceed any saving of lives by a huge factor.
That's what I heard today at my own doctor's office, because no one's there. And as the public wants answers, well, some of the experts are hailing the results of new expensive drug therapies with middling evidence of success, but warning us away from cheap, generic drugs that have already saved lives both here and abroad. And the FDA, I hate to say it, but they got this one wrong big time. While, of course, every drug has potential side effects and prescription drug interactions, there's more than ample evidence that hydroxychloroquine saves lives, speeds up recovery time, and cuts down on hospitalizations. It's also one of the safer drugs out there just by virtue of the fact that it's been around for, 65 years? And as I've mentioned before, France's esteemed epidemiologist, Professor Didier Raoult, and his team of colleagues released the results of hydroxychloroquine in 1,061 COVID patients. Good clinical outcome and virological cure were obtained in 973 patients within 10 days. No cardiac toxicity. It showed 91% effectiveness in 8 deaths. So why is the FDA not so much as noted the work of this premier epidemiologist in all of Europe? And by the way, Chinese researchers released their own retrospective study on Friday, and they found equally impressive results using hydroxychloroquine in patients who were seriously ill. 568 patients critically ill with COVID all received basic therapy, but additionally, 48 of them received hydroxychloroquine for 7 to 10 days, 200 milligrams twice per day. Hydroxychloroquine treatment is significantly associated with decreased mortality in critically ill patients with COVID-19 through attenuation of inflammatory cytokine storm. Therefore, hydroxychloroquine should be prescribed for treatment of critically ill COVID-19 patients to save lives. Okay, well, we can say consider the source. This is from China, and it's not yet peer-reviewed. But in a pandemic, as Professor Raoult has said, with lives on the line and still no established therapy or vaccine, not everything can be peer-reviewed. Experts are not always right. None of us are. Can't be. No one's infallible. But in times like these, sometimes we have to take yes for an answer. Now, finally, about all those bad models. The experts were all over the place in projecting the virus's lethality.
We're going to bring down the number of infections so we don't have 2.2 million deaths or 1.6 million deaths.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw 100,000 deaths. It's more like the 60,000 than the 100 to 200,000.
Okay, if you're not confused yet. Now they're saying that 134,000 could die by COVID by August. What? That's double what they were saying a few weeks ago. So why is this happening? Well, the expert at IHME at University of Washington did a lot of this modeling. He explained it this way.
We're seeing many states reporting on presumptive deaths that were missed in the official death data. And now they're going back, finding deaths that were in nursing homes, elder care facilities, and reporting, large numbers of those deaths on a given day. That just means that more deaths occurred that means the trajectory of the epidemic is also bigger.
Retrospectively adding deaths to the COVID count. No issues there, I'm sure. No issues with accuracy, except that we had one of the worst influenza pneumonia seasons in decades in the United States. Not reported very often, is it? So we're still trying to get a final count on those flu and pneumonia deaths from the CDC, by the way. Haven't gotten them yet. Very, very strange. Well, the experts struck again. And those are my thoughts at the end of day 49, America in shutdown.
And if you want to understand, where I'm at or where the country's at in large part, I started talking about the lack of flu data from the CDC, the generality of flu data, and then when I noticed that they were including probable cases in the flu data, the Wuhan flu data, the coronavirus, COVID-19, I don't know how scientifically, when you move from influenza to Wuhan flu to coronavirus to COVID-19, how you can justify what you're presenting as data and then say now you're going to go back 2 months, 3 months, when, as Laura alluded to and I alluded to many weeks ago, that they're being pushed to identify cases that they can't verify as COVID cases just because they had flu-like symptoms. I mean, did they have influenza? Did they have bronchitis? I mean, what was it that actually killed them, or in this case, what actually caused them to lose their life, or whatever we want to call it in terms of morbidity? Why are we continuing to search for justification for the numbers, which you should just not even listen to what they're saying? Yes, we understand that people are being impacted by this virus, and in some cases, they are dying from it. But yet, there is no conversation that says, how do we get hydroxychloroquine on a mass production scale in conformance with the president's directives on getting things that help prevent the virus from spreading to people who are at high risk in place? It's been 6 weeks. We can't mass produce a drug that has been and is in production, and we can't, just like they've done at Amazon, just like they've done at other locations, stop production of drugs that aren't as in demand and increase the production over 6 weeks. So by now, we couldn't have had hydroxychloroquine being prescribed in nursing homes, prescribed for elderly people who are at high risk, so that they can immediately get on it, because we don't talk about the inflammatory nature. Inflammation kills lots of things, and not only people, but it kills your body. I mean, inflation is bad. So inflammation, not inflation, sorry. Inflammation is bad, and getting that inflammation down and doing things to keep your body fighting inflammation is important. I know that as a type 2 diabetic. And when we get to the opinion section, I'll talk about that more. This mask issue, there is yet to be a study on the effective nature of masks. I'm going to tell you, as a structural engineer, the sheer pressure that is created when someone sneezes cannot be stopped by a mask. So when you're walking around breathing in a mask and you sneeze, you are pushing droplets out into the air. And when you breathe in with that mask, those droplets are going to attach to that mask, and ultimately, through any moisture and contact with your lips, if you touch the mask with your hand and then touch your face or rub your eyes, you simply created a collection point for the virus. I mean, you, in a sense, have created a place that creates more risk of getting the virus. And there's nothing being done to study the actual impact of wearing these masks as it relates to something that is spread through contact and surfaces and how long it's going to survive on that surface. So masks, we would need to find a way to coat that mask with something that would kill the virus. Now you're breathing that in. So it goes on and on and on and on and on. Our immune system, people, that's what's going to stop this virus. And that's the problem that Laura Ingram's alluding to with social distancing. You're not going to stop the virus. Doctors know they're not going to stop this virus. But again, to what we're experiencing related to people getting sick, that has happened throughout time, and what we're doing to people is what is so amazing, and that people are just willing, based on what they're hearing, to just follow blindly what is being told to them to do. And if you look at any situations where dictators have taken over, where mass hysteria has taken over, it's just classic how governments or individuals are able to start controlling people's lives when they're just locked in fear. And they're doing it right now, and we just don't even know it. So we're going to cover that more, in my opinion. I'm sorry I get off a little bit in trying to present the information, and want to try to keep that as neutral as possible, but please accept my apology for being a little more opinionated in my presentation. And again, that's why I try to share data from other sources, so that it helps to emphasize that these conversations need to be had. Much like jobs, there's a video on my event page, if you've seen that on Facebook, and that's how you found my channel, that talks about jobs and the importance of jobs, and what are those jobs going to look like? What will it look like for us to go back to work? Are we going to be mandated to put in some sort of social tracking app on our phone in order to get a job? Are we going to be forced to take a COVID-19 test, or Wuhan flu test, or coronavirus test, whatever you want to call it? And then if we test positive, are we going to not get that job? So now getting sick with the flu, much like smoking marijuana, is a reason to lose your job. And that's something that you should be thinking about. So that moves into, so is it just me? Who's representing us? You need to ask yourself that question. Watch the debates. It's surely not Tom Tiffany and Tricia Zunker. It's surely not our current legislature. They're right on board with social tracking, social tracing, violations of our civil liberties. Who is controlling the data? Who is the person that we are relying on to give us fair, unbiased, accurate data? Who is it? Do you know? I don't know. And at this point, with all of the misinformation that's being put out there, I don't know who to believe. And that should be concerning for you. And as always, we've got the links of the day. And please check those links out. Watch the video again. Watch the other videos put out by Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson. And they provide an alternative view. Whether you agree with it or not, it at least is a way for you to think about what you're believing and what you might want to consider. So we've reached the opinion section here. And in my opinion, we are on a track to go down a very dangerous road. We have people abusing their power. We have groups deciding for us how we're going to live, how we're going to get a job, where we're going to go, when we're going to be able to see people. And if they don't like us seeing people, they're going to put us in jail. If they want to track us and they want to stomp on the Bill of Rights again and not have just cause for search and seizure, they're going to put drones in the air that are going to monitor us 24 hours a day. You should be really afraid when people are saying they're watching you and they're tracking us with their cell phone data, with our cell phone data, with our Facebook and internet data, monitoring how and where we are. You should be turning off all your location services, period. Do not allow the government or anybody to know where you are at any given time, because it's none of their business. And they would normally need a warrant to get that data. But these companies that you have trusted are just happy, like Facebook, to provide that data to whoever wants it. But yeah, here's where they've been. Here's how people are moving. You really should be concerned about that. And that brings us to food for thought. Are companies like Facebook and AT&T or Sprint, who are providing tracking data to the government, violating our civil liberties? And do you need to think about what your agreements are with those companies in terms of providing your location data? I know I'm going to be contacting them all and finding out what that is and what my rights are in terms of not allowing them to provide that to anyone without a warrant. And in some cases, even if they have a warrant, it should be absolutely ridiculously difficult for people to get that information. And this came out during the Homeland Security rollout. We saw these same issues related to our privacy when we had the 9/11 catastrophe, and they being whoever it is. I mean, we have so many different covert operations that we just don't know what's going on, but it was led by the Homeland Security Agency, and we've seen even through our elections here 3 years ago that the violations just go on and on and on. And we are just blindly believing everything we're being told and not putting up any resistance. But if we do resist or we do dissent, we're being censored. So you need to ask yourself that question, and you need to think about they're watching you. And on that note, thank you for joining me. Please subscribe, like, share the video. Please help me with my nomination papers so I can help represent you in a way that is fair and just and in conformance with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Because I can surely tell you, Tom, Tiffany, and Tricia Zunker will not be doing that for you. And they'll be right there, ready to just do whatever they think needs to be done for whatever reason to maintain their control. And in order to make sure I'm compliant with all election rules, I am Michael Opela, and I approve this message. And then, of course, paid for by Trailblazers for Michael Opela Committee. 2, 3, 4.